to apologize again.
Good morning and welcome to the Iberville Parish School Board Retreat. I call to order the November 22nd, 2024 School Board Retreat meeting. Our retreat meeting are broadcasting live. To access the stream, there is a video icon located on the online meeting agenda, and a link is located on our district website, Facebook, and X, formerly Twitter. Roll call, please. Ms. Raj.
Mr. McGlasha.
Here.
Ms. Holmes.
Here.
Ms. George.
Here.
Mr. Tillier.
Here.
Ms. Laws.
Here.
Ms. Higdon.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Abair.
Here.
Ms. Roy. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We will have reflections, a moment of silence. Everyone, please stand. Heavenly Father, as we embark upon the holiday season, I ask that your presence and blessings will be with all employees, keeping them safe, healthy, allowing each of us to enjoy family and friends. I humbly ask for your guidance and support for our leaders and board members, granting us a district with strength, wisdom, perseverance to navigate through the challenges ahead of us. Open doors where needed, surround the district with people who will encourage and uplift our district. May our efforts be aligned with yours, with your will, and may your presence be felt throughout this journey. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Iberville Parish School Board Vision Statement. Iberville Parish School Board, with our families and partners, the Iberville Parish School System will provide equitable opportunities, academic excellence, and positive school environments so that every student strives in the path that they choose. Next, we will have new business. Dr. Vallon.
Yes, good morning, everybody. And I'm probably going to alternate between standing up and sitting down today. Been having little back issues lately, so I need to make sure I don't get too stiff. But first off, this is, not a meeting in which you have action items. This particular session is a publicly called meeting, which is required by the open public meeting laws in Louisiana, which also, since August of this year, are required to be broadcast and live streamed. So our meeting today is being recorded and it is being live streamed on our district's YouTube page. I sent to you multiple correspondences over the last couple of months, correspondence that we would have a retreat. And retreats have a couple of different purposes, one of which at times is to provide training. Board members are required by law to get a certain number of training hours in a year. This particular one really we'll submit what we think might apply for LSBA, but this one is really more about some local things and to have discussion around. And the main purpose of these kind of retreats are to be able to spend more time discussing different current issues that are ongoing, potential future issues that we need to address as well. So with that being said, I sent the board some items that I knew that I wanted us to discuss in kind of update on, and then asked you all if you wanted to submit any other items. And I did get a couple of other items that came through, so all of those are reflected in the board agenda that you have in front of you today. So the very first one, I just reshare. The very first one is the most current and most relevant thing happening, for our school system today, and that's, of course, tax millage renewals that are on the December ballot. Kind of want to give you all an update on where we are, and also for the sake of, the public that may watch this live or watch it recorded later on, a little more perspective in the status that we're at with these right now. So the first part of this, is, if you go to the next slide, Kim, we've got a little presentation prepared for you that's going to flow with the agenda for today. So I guess if we look at the board docs agenda, if you want to call the first item, Ms. Laws.
Yes, so the first item on the agenda is to discuss the tax millage renewals.
All right, so as we go through each of the items, we've got some slides with some information to prepare, and the handouts that you have in your folder should kind of flow into the order. So, can you? This is just a reminder of what millages we're looking at, okay? And of course, the alternative schools is a 1.78 mil. One of the things that I was asked to address today involves how is the funds, or how are the funds going to be used? Well, I first want to reiterate that we're not asking for any additional money. So this isn't a plan that we're going out to the public and asking for X amount of more dollars so we can then build a school or give a huge raise with additional funds or any of that kind of stuff. These millages are being asked to be renewed, and actually at a lower rate than what they currently are. So the first one would roll off the books in 2025, which means we collect for that one in 24, which would be this coming January in 25, and then we would collect for 25, which would be in January 26. If that millage is not renewed, that funding goes away. That funding comprises of a little over $2 million. Those funds are completely dedicated to alternative programming for our students. As I've mentioned before, if a student is expelled from school, we have to continue educational services. That's the law. And that funding was dedicated via millage many years ago to provide for that, and we've expanded with these alternative programmings for kids and the use of these funds into IVLA and into our Therapeutic Learning Center for some of the kids that are much younger, that the IAPS program is really not ideal for kids who are 5 and 6 and 7 years old. Operations and maintenance, that millage is 4.83 mils. That one's self-explanatory. That funding, which probably draws a little over $5 million a year, that funding goes strictly to maintenance and operations. And believe me, that alone is nowhere near enough to maintain the buildings and systems and the employees within the maintenance department. As I've mentioned with several presentations I've done around the parish, we spent, over $7 to close to $8 million in a 15-month period just on HVAC upgrades, replacements, and maintenance. So that millage is very self-explanatory. The next one is the school district number 5. This one runs through 2027's assessment. This original millage was passed in 2008 at 31 mils. And this one was for construction and salary and benefits of the school district. And we're asking for renewal at 26 mils. You all already rolled back the 2024 assessment to 30.94 when we got reassessment numbers. This is one that I'll go into a little bit more detail with, where that funding goes and where we can project for it to go out if it's renewed down the road. And then salaries and benefits, that was a 10.5 mil that we rolled back to 10.48 with the reassessment. We're asking to renew at 8.5. And that one draws at 8.5 mils. It'll be between 9.5 to 10 million that is projected on there. I'll go into some numbers when it comes to how much our payroll is in a little while. And then the other two, in a few years, we'll have to address the other operations and maintenance millage. That one runs through 2031. And then we do have a 3.48 perpetual constitutional property tax as well. Next slide, Ms. Siraj. Here, I sent you some documents. Kim, if you can open the first one, the sales tax summary. I sent these documents to you a few months ago at the request of one of our board members because it's critical for everyone to understand that because of the relative wealth of Iberville Parish, not Iberville Parish School Board, but Iberville Parish as a whole, 85% of our projected budget this year comes from local revenue. We get very little from the state. And Mr. Stewart and I just got some news yesterday. We've been budgeting $3 million a year from the MFP to go to the charter school. That has now jumped to 5.1 million. That's 2.1 million more of the very little state funding that we get that now goes to the charter school. It lags a couple of years when they calculate your local funds for education, and it caught us in this past fiscal year. So of that 12 or so million that we get in MFP from the state, now over 5 is going to the charter school. That makes it even more critical, to have the local revenues in place to operate our system. The first document was a sales tax. We have 2 total percentage of sales tax in our school district. The first one is a 1% sales tax. This one is used for salaries and benefits in our school system. That's a general fund, expenditure. Budget estimate of that is, $11.28 million. 18 million, the first one. Then there's a 2/3% sales tax that also goes to employee salary and benefits and academic program enhancement. Salaries and benefits gets about 2/3 of that, and academic enhancement fund gets about another 1/3. That academic enhancement fund, pays for some of the positions in our school district that help support academics. You all recently, we let you know about some upgrades we were making in our performing arts centers. We budgeted $100,000 for MSA East. We budgeted $100,000 for MSA West. MSA West to do sound and light came in above that, so we've allocated academic enhancement funding to pay for that. New lighting and new sound in the PAC over at MSA West alone is close to $200,000. And then the third item on this list is a 1/3% sales tax that is dedicated to the cost of health and dental insurance benefits for our employees and our retirees. That projection is about $7 million. We think it's going to come in a little bit over this year, which is a good thing, because I think everyone knows that health insurance costs aren't going down. We've made some internal changes when it came to prescription benefit management, which is bringing that down a little bit, but the health insurance cost overall continue to rise. Because of this kind of dedicated sales tax, 13 years in a row, this board has not had to raise premiums for employees, And we've also not been raising it on the Humana plan for retirees. That funding goes straight to those insurance costs of a self-funded plan. And we'll talk about those numbers a little bit later on as well. If there are excess funds in this account that can be used for a 13th check, we haven't had excess funds in that account because of the rise in medical claims. So we've been using some of those general fund sources to be able to give stipends and pay raises to our employees. If you go to the next attachment, Ms. Siraj, is just a summary of the property taxes that we collect in the district. And these I already went through with you, but I need everybody to understand, and our public as well. As you saw with the sales tax funds, they're dedicated to specific expenditures. With these millages, most of them are dedicated to specific expenditures. The 1.78 mil, that is strictly for alternative programming for students. The 4.83 mil, strictly for maintenance and operations. The 10.5 that we're asking to renew at 8.5, salaries and benefits. The 31 mil that we're asking to renew at 26 mils, that's where you've got some flexibility as a board, because that particular one was passed for salary benefits of employees and for capital outlay. So that's where you have some flexibility, and that's one of the fund sources that we've been able to tap into for all of these different construction projects that have been going on in the parish, for the planned ones out into the future, and for some of the things I'm going to show you in a little while that makes our master salary schedule and our compensation packages for employees very enticing. All right, let's go to the next slide. I think we went. I thought it skipped one. All right, so question I was asked, how do these funds get used? I'm going to go through a summary of some things, and of course this isn't all comprehensive. But the funding that we have, where we're asking either for lower rates, allows for, number one, continuation of current things that we're doing in the school district that without those revenue sources, we can't continue to do. Number one, we have higher than normal, higher than average salaries for employees and low premium cost for the benefits that are associated with it. We have low pupil-teacher ratios in the school district. Without the revenue, that can't happen. You know, we looked at classroom size numbers a couple of months ago when we started the school year, and our core classes district-wide, the average is about 16.1. The only campuses that number is higher are in our academy programs. You know? But when we throw our elective offerings into that mix as well, that number drops to about 10 to 1. You know, so the PT ratios in our district are very good for our teachers. We've continued, as you all know, facility upgrades, renovations, additions. We've got a lot of capital outlay going on in the district, and the bulk of that's coming from the 31 mil tax that we're asking to renew at 26. We try every year to add more academic and career tech ed offerings for our students. You know, a prime example this year is the firefighter program. You know, you're going to get an update on that at the December board meeting as we have kids that are finishing up that program. We have kids from North, you know, transporting them to BRCC to get welding in for them. They didn't have that opportunity before. You know, we're working to try to get welding and pipe fitting into East Iberville next school year. We didn't have that before. We added agriculture at North and on the east side the last 2 years. Those funds pay for those types of additions, and we're constantly seeking out ways to do more. We have school counselors on every campus. That is not the case in all school districts in Louisiana. We have nursing services on all campuses. That is also not the case in all districts. We also have school-based health clinics. Plenty of places don't have that. Both schools in North Iberville, both schools on the east side, and Platinum High have school-based health clinics. We've got SROs on every campus. The sheriff has been awesome to work with. We work with St. Gabriel PD, but we got a cost that comes with that as well, which we'll discuss that number in a little bit. We've got master teachers on all campuses to help support our classroom teachers. And we give access to all 3- and 4-year-olds for pre-kindergarten. That is not the case in most school districts. And the only reason we're able to do that is these general fund dollars that we have supplements Head Start, supplements LA4, supplements 8G, the other sources that pay for early childhood. I think we spend well over $1 million a year supplementing to offer our 3- and 4-year-olds in the district to come to public education. Here's just some numbers, because, our budget looks big. Our average pupil teacher per pupil expenditure is between $17,000 and $18,000 a year. You can't take the whole budget and divide by the number of kids and say that's your instructional per pupil expenditure. You can do some simple math and say that's how much money we're spending per kid, but there's costs in here that don't touch the classroom that you have to pay. Some of them do touch the classroom. Our salary and benefits alone, not including health insurance, is almost $70 million a year. That number is higher because we have more people in our schools than districts our size. If you're going to have smaller pupil-teacher ratios, you got to have more teachers. If you're going to provide counselors in every school, that's more people. If we're going to provide adequate staffing in our cafeterias to feed our kids, that requires more people. We probably have a larger fleet of buses for districts our size because of our geography. Most school districts that have 41 or 4,200 total kids don't have 60 buses on the road. We don't have much of a choice because of our geographical locale, because our kids going to academy programs and choice programs also get transported, and we're transporting kids to St. John, not only in the city of Plaquemine, but we're transporting them to St. John from North Iberville and from the White Castle community. That service was increased this year. Non-health insurance related costs. We're talking about liability insurance. Any other insurance we have to pay for that has nothing to do with health insurance is close to $3 million a year. I don't know about y'all, but I know what happened with my house insurance renewal I just got. And it went up substantially. I would anticipate that number's gonna rise come the spring when we gotta renew our property insurance. That also includes liability insurance for lawsuits. We live in a lawsuit-happy world, and that costs us money. We added, additional insurances dealing with this cybersecurity stuff with our last renewal. That's only going to keep going up. Health insurance, this is just the cost, $12.6 million last plan year. We don't know what the 2024 plan is going to finalize that yet, but that number went up substantially over the last several years. Transportation costs, that's not going into what the state reports as your per pupil expenditure on instruction, but we pay close to $1.5 million a year just on our base transportation. That doesn't count bringing kids to athletic events. That doesn't count bringing kids to field trips. That doesn't count any of these extra transportation costs. We transport kids from White Castle to Plaquemine High for welding, from Plaquemine High to White Castle for cosmetology, from North to Port Allen for welding, from MSA West, Plaquemine High, back and forth, a whole bunch of different things. That's not included in that cost. Maintenance costs in 24 fiscal year, $37 million. A huge chunk of that for that particular fiscal year was the money we spent on HVAC upgrades. Millions upon millions of dollars went into our HVAC systems. 3 schools, we pulled all the pipes out the ground for the condenser water lines over the summer. That's not cheap to do that. Those are things that we expend money on that people see dirt moving, but they don't see a building erected. But those things cost, those 3 combined, cost more than the classroom addition we're doing at MSA West right now. Just those 3, changing those pipes out of the ground. It costs way beyond salaries and benefits to operate the business side of a school system. SROs alone, $700,000. And we anticipate that's going to continue to rise. In today's world, just to let you know, that's just the SROs on what they do at the campuses each day. We've spent hundreds of thousands more on additional security details at athletic events and other functions in our school district. We've spent close to $500,000 on metal detection devices, and we're going to do more. Right now I'm looking at some bag scanning machines that can help to expedite. We did a virtual demo last week, and I'm trying to get them to come show me the machine in person to help expedite, and do the bag checks in a different way, where we run them through an x-ray machine, similar to what you have at the courthouse if you go over there. Those things cost money. And security, I will always put that #1 when it comes to budgeting of monies. So when we know we've got one of these big events happening, we have budgeted for security that the schools support, and then we tell them, whatever more you need, you got. Next slide. More ways that funds get used. We spend almost $2 million a year on utilities. Just like everybody at their house gets a bill from either City of Plaquemine Power or Entergy, we get a bill for every building in this district from Entergy or City of Plaquemine Power. We got to pay for water. Nobody gives that to us for free. We got to pay for natural gas. We don't get that for free. Every month, hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent to keep water, electricity, natural gas flowing through our school systems to keep them operable. This year's project costs, and we'll do a recap of that in a little while, we estimated at about $19 million. Some of those are currently underway, and some of those are getting kicked off right now, and then we got some more coming. Fund balance. We're required to keep 7.5% of fund balance. We currently have about 33, almost 34 million in fund balance right now in the unrestricted balance, which exceeds the 7.5% requirement. That's part of that total budget. But that's reserve funds that we have to have on the side. And we've got some other funds like that if you got questions about, Mr. Stewart can kind of let you know. We got a salary reserve fund. That's in that total budget. We've got general fund balances in plenty other accounts. Just a couple of other ones. $500,000 a year almost on fuel. We got to put fuel in school buses. We got to put fuel in our maintenance fleets. That's just fuel. Y'all know that fluctuates. Right now, gas prices are down. In a heartbeat, they could be back at $4 a gallon. And whatever we got running on diesel is even higher. Substitute pay, $1 million plus. You see, if somebody doesn't come to work in a classroom, you're not only still paying them full pay, but we're paying a sub to go into the room as well. And that's part of why we encourage people constantly to come to work. Now, some of these are unavoidable. Some of them are serious medical issues. We have a lot of young ladies having babies, so there's a lot of maternity leaves involved in this. But that's another cost that people don't generally see. All right, next slide. That kind of takes us to the next agenda item, but they all kind of tie in. So before we move to that one, for what I put up there so far that we kind of talked through, when I'm asked about how are you going to use the funds if these taxes are renewed, well, for that piece of it, those are how the funds are spent. And if local revenues aren't renewed, those expenditures have to be reduced according to how much less revenue we were to draw. And part of that are some future project things we'll discuss before we get to, we'll do master salary schedule things first.
Can we have
Yes. Yes, yeah, we'll share them with you. You can share them with them now. We just finalized everything this morning.
Thank you.
Okay.
But yes, and there's links in those slides as well.
I don't know if you can answer any questions or not.
Yeah, we can answer
Okay.
anytime. That's,
So I remember the MFP, we used to get 12 million, give 3 million to the charter for 300 kids. We don't even know if half of them live here. And is it still around 12?
we're still getting around 12, but now it's 5.1 million that we had to send to them.
So we gotta give them 5?
Now, that's not just this charter.
Right. That's
Any type 2 charter around the
Bless
state
you.
that,
Yeah.
that they're claiming residents of our parish go to. So the Iberville charter here is the one, of course, that would get both. But UView Academy, which is a virtual school in Baton Rouge, that's got, I think, now 3,000 or 4,000 students statewide enrolled, they getting a little chunk of that as well. Having IVLA kind of offsets that because we're offering that opportunity locally too. Now, Ms. Johnson has been working to try to get this MOU with the Charter Academy to release to us the addresses. It's a major bureaucratic nightmare to try to get that. But we are still in progress of trying to obtain it.
I appreciate y'all, because I mean, it just, 5 million for 300 kids, and then we get to keep 7 for 4,500.
Yep.
We definitely need these local
Absolutely.
tax dollars.
And I think that's what the public needs to know as well. I mean, if they've got kids enrolled in Iberville Charter, the local funding from here is going there too. Because what they do is they take, this is how much is state dollars, this is how much you're doing per pupil with local dollars, and they combine that and then pull that out of our MFP. So the local charter is benefiting from the increased revenues and the increased assessment of property values in our parish. So, you know, the charter folks out there, you got a stake in this as well. Any other questions before we move to the next item? And like I said, they're going to float. They're all going to relate for a while. Read the second.
Yeah, so the second item on the agenda is to discuss master salary schedule and adjustments made for 2024, 2025. Dr. B?
All right, this will be a little summary and some comprehensive things as it relates to master salary schedule. So one of the items that I was asked to present besides, what have you done with the money since the 31 mil tax was passed? One of the items was salary and what's happened with our master salary schedule since 2008. And it's huge. So let me just put this into perspective. Back in 2008, when the 31 mil tax was passed, it was projected to bring in revenue of about $10 million a year. The parish then sold bonds. All right? Bonds were a part of this. So of that $10 million, we have been paying $3.2 million a year to pay our bond indebtedness. MSA East, the improvements at MSA West, with the chunk of where that bond money went to construct projects. At that same time, a huge chunk of that money was used to give a pay raise. So if you look at what the starting teacher pay was in 2008 prior to that 31 mil tax passing to what it was the following year, it jumped almost $10,000. 8,000 some odd of that was local revenue raised from the new tax, and there was about a 1,400 or so state pay raise that was given that year. Well, over time, those revenues with the increased assessed value in our parish, the revenues that these millages draw has increased. Well, what's happened over that time, we talked a little bit about projects and maintenance and upkeep and lowering teacher-pupil ratios and on, but we've also been able to, since 2009, increase that again by over $10,000. So that starting teacher pay is the 4th highest in Louisiana. And I'm going to tell you, I want to be back at number 1. But in order to do that, we've got to have sustainable revenue. We did an across-the-board pay raise this past school year. That's recurring expenditure. We felt comfortable that we can afford that right now. Until we know that our local revenues are stable into a decade or more, then we've got to be a little more cautious about what we put in as a recurring expenditure. But things that we did do just recently with our master salary schedule was that $1,500 across the board raise, 2 retention stipends, one of which our employees got today. And because of the funding source, there's a commitment that comes along with that. One of the worst things that happens to kids in classrooms is when we lose teachers mid-year, or we lose teachers in October, or we lose teachers in February. So part of that is a reciprocal agreement. We'll pay you this stipend. You agree to stay to finish out the year now. We approved, or brought to you, and you approved an athletic stipend. We had to deal with some legislation this year, and we are now compensating employees with a pretty nice stipend when they go work those extra events for athletics. We then turned around and asked you to increase how much we're paying for after-school tutoring and for summer school. And you graciously approved that as well. All of that comes at a price tag. And then we did the stipend for the mandatory training if people did those after hours as they were required to do so. Next slide. Yes.
We're the 4th highest beginning teacher salary in the state.
Yes.
In the surrounding areas, our surrounding parishes? Aren't we the highest?
We're the highest of the surrounding parishes. The closest parish to us that pays more is St. Charles. And then the next one, they're tied. So Plaquemines Parish down in Belchase and in Venice and all that area, their start teacher pay is $60,000. St. Charles start teacher pay is $60,000. And Orleans is a little over $58,000. We do have the highest in our region. But I'm going to tell you, it is still difficult to fill positions in our classrooms. Very difficult. We've got a few positions this year that have been vacant the entire school year. And we've either had long-term subs in them, or we've had to just consolidate some classes.
But that's not just for our district.
It is not. It is not. But a lot of districts that pay that higher salary don't have that. St. Charles Parish doesn't have those kind of vacancies that we have. They also don't have the percentage of uncertified staff that we have. So we are in a heavy competitive area. Some of these other, like if you're in Plaquemines Parish, you're so isolated. If you're in St. Charles Parish, you're in a place where there's only limited options with, where you go out and commute to. Here, we have teachers coming in from Lafourche, you just hired another one. Assumption, West Baton Rouge, Point Capee, Zachary, EBR, Central Community, you name it. And you're dealing with one of the largest school districts in the state of Louisiana right there across the river, which means they got way more positions than we do. So we do lose people because they can cut their commute from an hour and a half to 2 hours to 30 minutes. So although we are paying more than anybody around, I still believe we got to get that gap up even more, because what's happened over the last few years, they've all increased their pay. Now, they haven't caught up with us, but the more they close that gap, the easier it is for people to work closer to home. 50% of our teaching staff live outside the parish. Half of them. And the population of Iberville Parish is about 29,000 people total. We don't have enough people becoming teachers to fill all of our jobs. So I think we've always got to be cognizant and aware of trying to bump that pay up for our staff. And I thank you all, because when we've done these things, we didn't discern a support worker from a teacher. We have valued everyone, because some of our support staff are some of the lowest paid people in the district, period. And I thank you for that. It shows that we're valuing everybody. And about 70% of our support employees live in Iberville Parish. So we're investing right back into the economy of our own parish by doing that. So a few other things I want to highlight that we do in our salary schedule that without sustained revenue we can't do anymore. Back in 2010, Act 54 passed in the legislature, which stated now you've got to do some differentiation in how people are being paid. So we had to build into our salary schedule provisions for effectiveness and demand, and then experience. And none of those three could be more, no one could account for more than 50% of how your salary schedule is built. We have effectiveness pay in our district. Last week, all those teachers that earned it, they got their effective pay. And that money could range from a few $100s to over $1,000 a person, depending upon the evaluation score. But not only did they get a stipend, if they're a teacher who gets a VAM score, which you're going to see we honor those again. We honored them last year at the board meeting. The teachers this year who got highly affected on VAM, they'll be recognized at the December board meeting. Those teachers moved up 3 levels in the salary schedule. They didn't move just 1, they moved 3. So that by itself has the potential to be an $1,800 increase in pay. If they're not a VAM teacher and they're highly effective, they move up 2. Our minimum club sponsor stipend is $1,200 a year. So when our people are sponsoring maybe a dance club or a 4-H club or lots of different other clubs that we have, we're paying a stipend for that. We've got factors for athletics, for band, for cheer, for dance, for orchestra, for all of these things, which is a percentage of their salary. Could be 3%, 4%, 8%, 10%, all in our master salary schedule. And we're applying these factors against a salary that's higher than anybody else around. So when they take on those extra duties and responsibilities, they're getting compensated for it. This board added about 3 years ago, before I became superintendent, if our athletic teams make the playoffs, they get more pay as the coaches. If their season is extended, they get additional supplements. We pay up to 5% for CDL. So we have teachers, we have coaches, that if they drive 10 different events outside of their own sport, they get an additional 5% supplement to their salary. That's a few $1,000s. We have support certifications. You know, if you're a maintenance worker and you're certified in some type of water treatment or herbicide or many different certifications they can get, there's an additional stipend attached to that. For math teachers, we talk about demand. Teachers who teach math can earn up to $3,000 more a year. $500 per course that they teach. We give masters in demand stipends, $700 to $1,300. The longer you with us and the further you are, the higher that goes up. Next slide. The effective pay and levels, I discussed that already. We've got teacher leader type positions in our schools that get stipends. They do additional work to enhance instruction in their schools, and they get additional stipends if they're willing to take on that role. We added this year, lead bus operator, a $2,400 stipend, where our own people can come in and get trained to then teach the course for people to become bus drivers. We got what, 60 bus drivers, Ms. Miller?
Yes, sir.
3 finished the course.
Yes, sir. Part 1 of the course.
All right. The Department of Education offers these certifications for content leader. If you're a really strong math teacher, you can get certified to be a content leader and become one of those teacher leaders. There's a stipend for that. Every school has a school technology facilitator. These are the people who are supposed to be keeping their websites live and running and up to date, posting their social media posts, checking laptops in and out for kids and so forth. They get an additional $2,500 for that.
I think, with all of this, we can see that, yes, there's room for improvement, and we're always trying to compensate our employees. But I think we do a really nice job.
I agree.
Of compensating our employees for the work they do. And I know we're continuing to do more. And, and I think the majority do appreciate it.
Yes, they do. They do. And I've got plenty of emails back thanking us for, this last stipend that was given out from the ones that were done before. I think we got to keep showing, our appreciation for our employees. One thing is recruiting, but retaining is huge. Because every teacher that we bring in, we invest in them. Every cafeteria worker we bring in, They get trained. We invest in them. Same thing with bus drivers, same thing with power, same thing with maintenance employees. Every employee we're investing in. And so retaining them is huge. So all of those things that are out there, I tell people all the time, unless you have worked somewhere else, you really don't have a full understanding of how good it is in Iberville when it comes to the compensation package that they receive and the supports that come with it. I'm a person that when I was in a classroom, I had 33 kids in a class. And I was teaching science and history. We don't have that. We don't have anywhere near that in this district.
I've had several teachers tell me that have been in other school districts, in surrounding school districts, tell me what, you know, that it's, and they tell other people about it. And of course, like you said, the distance and all of that plays a factor.
It does. But keeping highly competitive compensation packages, keeping the supports in the schools, having the extra things that they can earn as well, all that's part of recruiting and retention. You know, so this part I kind of wanted to get through as well because I emailed this stuff out to you all. We made a whole bunch of salary schedule adjustments this year alone. Not counting what we did last year. And y'all remember last year, we added more levels to the salary schedules. We paid people back for time that they were frozen. We gave support employees credit for experience outside the system they didn't have before. So we've done a lot, right? But with this law that passed this past year, some topics of conversation came up around what do we compensate for that's considered additional as opposed to what comes with the job. And we revised job descriptions this past summer, I guess it was in July. And we added things that people were already doing in writing that are part of the job. Attending after school or before school faculty meetings has always been part of the job. Participating in graduation has always been part of the job. Being at open house has always been part of the job. Meeting with parents, parent conferences, IEP meetings, SAT team meetings, all of those things have always been part of the job. So when we found this major discrepancy with athletic events, we came to you with a recommendation from administration to rectify that. You've got that chart in your packet. Then our teacher advisory committee pointed out, well, it looks like we're paying for people to work a football game more than we're paying for people to instruct kids for after-school tutoring. We agreed. We came back to you and put it up to $45 an hour, which exceeds what the state says your minimum has to do if you require that kind of stuff. We don't require it, strictly voluntary. And we still have trouble getting people to do it, even at $45 an hour, by the way. We haven't had any issues getting people to work athletic events. None. But we're paying more for the after school and we're still having trouble with that. So we then put together some reports for you that I emailed out, asking our schools, what are the other things that teachers are required to do on your campus? And to let us know, is that everybody or is that a group? So open the first detailed report. This is in your packet. If you want to see the hard copy, if you've opened up the presentation, it's linked. If you click on detailed report, you can open it up. Sorry for the size of the print. You can probably blow that up a little bit. So every school had to turn in, and most of what they have on here does not include all staff members. Some of them have more than others. I think we just had at night the other day, the graduation coach at Plaquemine High did an activity for parents. Most of our schools have done some FAFSA stuff as kids need to fill out those applications, and doing some ACT workshops. I got a teacher that emailed me this week, wants to do an ACT workshop next Monday at Plaquemine High on a holiday. And we're going to do more of that. So things like literacy night. Yo, we get Title I money, right? That's federal dollars. We don't get a whole bunch, but every school gets it. They have to do those kind of activities because they're getting those federal dollars. Most of those are parent engagement type activities, which we have always, as educators, been required to participate in parent involvement activities. That's nothing new. So if you close that one, Kim, and open the summary one, this is where I just took that whole big old chart and put in here what the number of total assigned events for all teachers are. Not certain little groups of people, because early childhood, of course, they got to do a few more things, but that's the strings that's attached to when it comes to the federal funds that come with that. But look at the types of activities, and I wanted everybody to be very clearly to see that. Nothing on there are anything that are at normal, natural parts of our jobs as educators. Not a one. If you go back to the PowerPoint. So the last thing on here, we as an administration will absolutely go back. We as administration will continue to consider feedback from our teacher advisory group. We've got a meeting coming up again in January, and we will also continue to monitor this. And if we feel as though any recommendation needs to be made, then we'll come back to the board with that. And you are more than welcome, if you've got any ideas or suggestions or recommendations, to get that to me, and we'll meet as an administrative team. I think right now we're in a good place with this.
Dr. V, I have a question.
Yes.
Do we supplement the pre-K for their extra, like, home visits and whatever they do?
Their home visits are done during the school day,
Oh, during the school
during the
day.
work day.
Okay.
So they'll have additional parent activities that happen on campus. They got a couple of things they do at night. But the home visits, they've got more professional development days in their calendar, and they do those home visits during professional days.
So what about the, when they have something at night, do they get the same compensation as the other?
No, for those types of activities, they may have a parent night after school, which would equate to open house activity with other teachers, or a leap night.
School year.
Yeah.
There are four during the school year. I see this theater production, what did I say, West?
Because they don't require every teacher to attend that.
It's only required,
For the people who are doing it, but they don't require every teacher to attend that or work that evening.
okay.
That summarizes what every teacher on the campus has to do. And some of the activities or things you see on these charts, we're paying club sponsors for. So if you see something like a beta thing, we're paying a club sponsor for that. You know, for some of these other activities that's on that big chart, there's club sponsors that are paid to do those things. but I wanted you to see what everybody got. No matter what you do at Platinum High, you got to be here for this, right? So we'll always take feedback. If you've got any ideas or suggestions, we're always open. I think we will move to the next item.
Okay, so the third item on the agenda is to discuss ongoing and future projects and review summary of fall 2024 campus facility walkthroughs. Dr. V?
All right, so thematically, this continues with how are we using the money? If the tax passes or they're renewed, again, no new taxes, renewal at a lower rate, what are we going to do with the funds? Well, the first part dealt with these ongoing operational expenditures that we have as a school district, then everything dealing with master salary schedule that's going on, and then another big part of our budget are our projects. Some are small, some are big, and then some fall in the middle. So the big school district number 5 tax, which is 31 mills now, 26 if it gets renewed, beginning in 2028. That's the source for a lot of the projects that we're going to talk about today that's ongoing and things that we've looked at for the future. We also have the maintenance and operation budgets that help support those as well. So there's various funding sources that support capital outlay. And, as I've gone around and spoken to different groups, with ones that I regularly participate in and then ones that I've been asked to go speak at or they've come to us, I try to make sure to make a point that K-12 public school systems get $0 from the state or the federal government for capital outlay. 0. The state of Louisiana may allocate money for a small municipal museum to be built. They may spend money for a bridge to be built. That may come from federal fund sources as well. They may allocate money for a new building to go up at a university. They allocate all kind of money for roads to be built. 0 goes to public school systems for any capital outlay. Whether it's repairing and replacing a parking lot, whether it's renovating a 60-year-old kitchen and a cafeteria, whether it's building additional classroom space to accommodate for students, whether it's replacing an air conditioning system in one building that costs $600,000, whether it's replacing a chiller, one chiller in one school that might cost $1 million, if it's adding additional parking and adding a bus turnaround at a school like Crescent, we get $0 from the state or the feds for that kind of work. So anything that we do that is capital outlay or projects for construction, we cannot use MFP money for, and we don't have any federal funding for that. So when we talk about how do we use this local revenue and how are we going to use it into the future, this slide kind of is going to summarize where we are and where we need to go, and then at some point in the next couple of months, we will need to reconvene with the board to make some priority decisions. Today is just, this is where we are, this is what we see for a need down the road. So first, if Kim, you open the first link. Last May, we prioritized these for the 2024-25 fiscal year. North Iberville High is is under construction right now, the new building. MSA West, they should be doing some site work out there right now. Right? That's underway. We're soon going to be advertising the parking improvements for East Iberville. Next summer is the plan for the Platinum High kitchen renovation, which is the last of the big kitchen renovations. The current kitchen renovation, just by the way, wasn't part of the 24-25 original. Those were from the prior projects list. But those two kitchens are hopefully within the next month to 2 months will be complete in these, those are the three highest need kitchen renovations in the district. Crescent, North, and Platinum High. Now I will tell you, we learned something this year, not to do two massive ones at the same time. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. The softball project underway. At North, football, we're opening bids on December 5th. The White Castle Band one was slated for this year, and as a result of our walkthroughs and feedback from the school, we need to redesign that. So that one won't happen in 24-25, and we'll discuss that one a little bit later on as well. The second floor here to try to get our sped department over to this building is pending a potential sale of Plaza Drive's building. We got the appraisal in at $425,000. So right now I'm just waiting to hear back from the potential buyer on that. But when we do that, if we do it, which is pending the sale, we'll need to add the parking project that was put on hold when everything came in way over bid a while back. And then parking lot over at Plaquemine High is slated to, well, it's budgeted with this year's fiscal budget as well. And that's where the baseball field is. You get that all out of there and add parking in that area.
And when is that going to happen?
We got to redo the design a little bit. They've been working on it because originally when that 5-year plan was laid out on athletic facilities, there's a gym for Plaquemine High as part of that long-term plan, and the original design for that would have put that gym over where that baseball field is. Well, I've asked our architectural team to change that design, because then it would mean we have kids throughout the day having to cross where traffic is going through. So I've asked them to make that design, putting that gym closer to the building. That way the drive and the parking lot is separated and everything can be self-contained in a secure single point of entry setting. But that is on slate to happen this fiscal year, or at least to get a contract awarded. All right, so that is what we looked at for this year. We approved this list of 9. And this is where we are with those. So back to which that all amounted originally to about $19 million. So how's the money being spent? Some of it's right there. And there's a good mix in there of academic type projects, general improvement type projects, and athletic projects. So many of you participated in walkthroughs with us, right? Open that document. This is a summary. And if anybody asks, how are you going to spend this money moving forward? Well, you can show them this list, because there's a lot on it. And this will take years to get all of this accomplished. So what I did on this one, if it's highlighted in green, it's a security type project. If it's highlighted in yellow, it's a larger type project. I shared this document with you all in an email probably 6 to 8 weeks ago. I hope you had time to, really kind of purge through and see. There are a lot of items on here that are general maintenance and upkeep. When we talk about cleaning gutters, and small drainage projects, getting clocks working in the halls, because I agree with what one of you told me, the clock doesn't need to be in the hall if it don't work. So trying to get those things operable. You know, some getting TV monitors working. You know, you want to scroll through some more. You know, we'll just scroll through. You have a copy of it. You also have it. But stop there. But things such as changing flooring. That's not an easy thing and would have to be a major phased thing. It probably would take several months to redo flooring in a campus, if not 6 to 8 months with some of our campuses. We can't shut those schools down for that. But we do know from a priority standpoint some places that we at least need to get started in the near future in the halls. You know, classrooms present a whole nother issue. One of the things that we saw when we did the walkthroughs that is nowhere on any long-term project list is constructing a new early childhood building at Crescent Elementary. And I'm going to tell y'all, that's one I'm going to prioritize whenever the day comes to make a recommendation. For those of you who all attended the walkthrough, you saw it. For those of you who maybe couldn't do the walkthrough, but you've been there, you've seen it. And so that's a project that, you know, deals with housing children and teachers and parents in a much better learning environment, and also providing the opportunity to put some space for some growth. All right, let's scroll a little bit more. I mean, a lot of this deals with some lighting, getting rid of some carpeting, changing some flooring out. You know, we got some security things. Iberville Elementary, I'll just go here for a minute. Evan is sitting out here, and Evan took care already of one of the things there, which was getting the old building painted. Fresh coat of paint throughout the entire old building. It looks great. And it's going to look even better when we can get all the lighting replaced. There's parts of that hall that the lights have already been replaced, and what a world of difference. One of them is on the same big long hallway. As you go back towards the small gym in the back, the newer gym, it looks completely different than it does back on towards the highway. You know? So that's all part of these, you know, improving badge reading. Scroll to MSA East. One thing here that well, a couple of ones at MSA East that was talked about while we were there. The band room is really in not the most ideal location. If y'all remember, MSA East originally did not have a kitchen. MSA East had a gym that then was converted to a dining hall. All the food was cooked at East Iberville and was satellited over to MSA East. As MSA East has grown in enrollment, eventually a brand new kitchen was built in that space. Well, that brand new kitchen butts up to the band room. And so between the noise factor, between the appliance factor, just for a whole lot of reasons, that band room really needs to be relocated.
In the boiler.
You know,
That boiler room right next to it.
yeah, you got a boiler room back there, you got a compressor back there for HVAC, you just, it's really not a good place. This is one I think we need to do something with. You know, and I've already had some talks with our architects around where we could construct a new band room on that campus. I think it's a need. Again, that's where our kids and our employees are every single day. Dr. Austin spoke to us about widening the carpool lane, you know, and that's something I never thought of before, and I've been there at dismissal, I've been there taking in. The way that their parking is, it's a very narrow and potentially can cause some little bumper, fender bender, that kind of stuff. It's not like a high-speed danger thing. But that is something that's nowhere on the radar with the long-term plans that were put together a long time ago. So as we go, just like we changed last year from trying to renovate an awful building at North Iberville High, we changed that priority to build a new one. So that was something added, and as we did these walkthroughs, this is an example of something we saw.
And also, over there, we also need to work on the school crossing project, putting something at MSA, East.
You talking about on the highway?
Yeah, even if it's just a sign,
Again, it's a DOTD issue.
yeah,
We can't just put signs on a state highway.
yeah. But that's something we need to
Yes,
work on.
oh, I agree.
It's a project we need to work on.
I've spoken with the parish president a few times about this. He's trying to get something done to put some flashing lights in all of those kind of places.
And I've been talking to people at DOT also, trying to.
And the sheriff's office has contacted DOT about it. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
But that's
yeah.
something, yeah.
Absolutely. So a lot of this too here at MSA East are some maintenance type things. So scroll up a little bit more because I want to hit a couple of other ones. Stop here. MSA West, we need more dining space. As we are growing, and y'all were growing at MSA West. We're not growing everywhere else, but I can tell you this, MSA West and MSA East, that's where the growth has been. We need more dining room space. The cooking and kitchen areas, pretty big, but we need to do something with dining space. We pointed that out. Ms. Blanchard talked to us about that while we were there. I've spoken with the architectural team, and we're going to explore some different ideas. So this is going to be one I'm going to come back and probably ask to prioritize. Again, our kids are eating in there. Our employees are working in there. And the problem really lies around, we're trying to feed 1,100 kids, and next year is going to be more, with another pre-K class being added, in a short window. They've got the serving line capacity because there is a third serving line there. It's the seating capacity that we've got to address. Okay? All right. Go to White Castle, I think is the other one I really wanted to point out. The original plan over at White Castle was for the new gym to be built and then to take the band room and relocate the whole band room in a locker room area in the existing gym. And tear down the building where the band room is now. That building houses the full band room. That building houses the office space. That building houses the small pull-out rooms for kids to practice. And it houses all of the band storage. And it houses their in-school suspension room. So prior to even our walkthrough, when I went to a visit on the campus, Principal asked, can we relook at this project? Because, number one, we don't think that it's enough space in that gym to be able to accommodate for all of that. And where am I going to put my in-school suspension room? And where are we going to store all of these instruments? And we're not going to have locker room space on that side anymore. I think everybody knows White Castle puts on some pretty big basketball tournaments. And they're going to use both of those gyms for those tournaments. So when we did the walkthrough, we all kind of, looked at this and said, yeah, we got to revisit this. Because, yes, we need the additional parking, but we don't think this is the avenue to go about doing it. And that building that the band room is in, it's very aged, it's very old. You would have to put a whole lot of money in it to renovate it. So we are going to work with the design team to come up with an alternative plan for the band over at White Castle. So those are just examples of things that when you all first got, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, this 5-year plan, things like that wasn't even on radar. You know, just as the pre-K edition over at MSA West wasn't on radar back then. Crescent Early Childhood Building wasn't on the radar back then. You know, those are things that, you know, I really think we've got to consider when we come up with our next round of capital outlay projects. All right, go to the next attachment, Ms. Siraj, please. This document, which again, you have a copy of. Some of y'all might remember this, some of you might not. But Randy had started several years ago this big old spreadsheet. And most of that revolved around an athletic project plan. Then, when Evan and Todd came in, Todd made this really expansive spreadsheet. One page had what he called academic projects, which really is anything non-athletic. And then one of them was the athletic project layout. And that had 22, 23, 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27. I don't think it went all the way out to 27, 28 at that time. That was a very cumbersome, difficult to read document. The print was small, and you had to scroll a whole lot from left to right and up and down to be able to read that thing. So I asked Evan to make this more user-friendly. So this sheet shows multi-year projects that we've identified for every campus. These are either coming from the original plan that the board was presented 2 or 3 years ago, or additional things that we've recognized through walkthroughs and through, like we shared with you all, the state police inspection, you know, review that was done last year with some security things that we need to work on. So on this sheet, the highlighted in yellow systems are either underway or already done or part of this year's budget. If you see the little pinkish color highlight, those are kind of some priority things that either were already a priority or being added as a priority. The orange ones deal with some electrical things, and some of those things can be built into the maintenance budget. One of the priorities, I guess, we want to ensure that all of our kitchens ultimately have a generator connected. You know, what do you call those things? The transfer switch. You know, that the switch is already there. You can just plug in a generator on the back of an 18-wheeler truck and run that kitchen if we got to run it in the event of an emergency. And then there's some HVAC things that we've got to upgrade panels. The Siemens project was done quite a number of years ago, which was all about energy efficiency with HVAC systems. That equipment is now old. There's much newer technology. So every campus you're going to see this EMS panel upgrade. That revolves around HVAC. So if you add all of that up, you're looking at about $1.2 to $1.5 million just to upgrade those panels that operate the HVAC systems. So this particular document goes to school by school of things that down the line we need to do. So with sustained revenue into the next 10 to 12 years, most of this can probably get done in the future. Without a sustained stream of revenue into the next decade or more, then you will not have the funding to do many of the things that are on this list. We know 27, 28 are the rollout years of those current millages, So we know for the next 2 fiscal years, we can get some projects done. Anything after that only can occur if the local revenue sources continue to come in. So, go to the next document. I then took everything from Todd's old spreadsheet that was slated to be done in 2025-26, and I put them all into one document. Now, none of this is set in stone, I just want to let you know, because the board has each year approved the next fiscal year's projects. That big 5-year thing was like, this is a plan, and it's a living document, and we move things as priorities change, we add things, we take things off, but annually, we got to decide what those projects are going to be. I'm not asking you today to do that. I'm letting you know what was slated, and then show you some things that were not slated that we need to, in the spring, decide on when to address. Okay? So again, today is for just discussion purposes only. You will see a whole lot of security fence things on here. I'm confident that the security perimeter fencing can be built into our maintenance budget. So that's not something that needs to be part of the big capital outlay. We know we can build that into the maintenance budget, but there was a bunch of them on slate for 25-26. There were 4 kitchen renovation projects that were in that original plan to do in 25-26. None of these are major guts. All right, none of them are anything like Crescent, Plaquemine High, or North Iberville. These are all some touching up, some facelift, maybe some new equipment. None of these were major structural things. But I will say that we've learned, just by dealing with 2 of those big ones this summer, we can't have too many of those things going on at one time. Although some of these may be a June and July project only, we've learned that that type of work and the lead time to get the new equipment in means if we shut one down the last week of May, there's a pretty good likelihood that it will not be ready to open come the start of school. So when we are ready to make recommendations to you, we will do so in a prioritized manner. I don't think we could do all 4 in one summer, to be honest with you. And what's happened on some of these projects is you get the same contractor that bids on multiple of the same jobs. I think we're seeing some of that with concessions or press boxes right now. They don't have the capacity to do all of that. So we're going to prioritize. Of the ones that are on here, I think internally we kind of discussed that East Iberville would be the top priority of those 4. But we will come back and revisit. We can't have too close to one another in proximity in case we need one to cook and satellite food. We got to deal with these portable kitchen type things. If we got to shut one down for a long period of time, and we've learned some things from that. So it'll be much better at Plaquemine High when we do that project. All right, so right now you see this pipe fitting welding shop classroom. That's something that was put on that longer range thing. I'm going to tell you right now, I am pushing hard to get that done this year to be able to offer this in the fall.
Thank you, thanks.
Our kids, it's the East Iberville pipe fitting welding shop classroom.
Thank you.
I don't know if we can do it or not, but I'm going to tell you one thing.
We're gonna try.
We going to wear our tails out trying.
Yes.
We're working this on 2 angles right now. Our architectural team over here working through what do we need to do with that classroom space itself to be able to handle welding machines and pipe fitting stations. And then Dr. Skidmore is on the academic side of things in conversations with businesses on the east side of the river and industry for potential sponsorships. But the biggest thing is we've got to be able to find part-time instructors, because we're not going to have the ability to hire 2 full-time teachers to teach welding and pipe fitting. We're not going to have the demand for that. I hope we eventually do, because then that's a good use of staffing, but I don't think we can start with that. So we've got some moving parts happening with that thing, and if we can get it done to open it in August, that's the target. All right? If not, then I will recommend that for the following one. But some of this we can kind of build into our maintenance work as well. And if we get some sponsorships, one of the things we're looking at, you know, we want 5 welding stations. Can we get 5 industry partners to sponsor 1 each? You know, so those conversations are ongoing right now.
Dr. Farrar,
Yes.
the kitchen renovations at MSA West, White Castle, Iberville Elementary, East Iberville, that is the sustaining kitchens? You're talking about the ones that are in existence
Yes.
now?
Yes.
What kind of renovations are you
It may
talking
be
about?
superficial painting, it may be changing out equipment. None of those need to be gutted.
Okay,
Those are small rental projects.
okay.
The timing part of it involves getting stuff in. You know, a lot of the equipment in some of those kitchens need to be replaced. You know, and that's really where the big expenditure comes. But as far as their floor plan, as far as how things are laid out, those aren't anywhere like what we dealt with the 2 we're renovating now and Plaquemine High this summer. Some of it's cosmetic. You know, Brad?
Yeah, and also includes some renovations in the dining area, not just the kitchen. So
Okay.
maybe some upgrades in the dining too.
Sprucing it up, you know. I just, they know, I expect Plaquemine High's dining area to look nothing like it looks right now. You know, and some of them just need that kind of cosmetic, you know.
Basement?
So would you,
Yeah.
would the increase in dining area at MSA happen at the same time of these renovations?
That can be separate. Yeah, mainly at MSA, it's kitchen stuff with that little renovation project. The adding of dining area has to be a completely separate
That needs to
project.
happen.
Oh, yeah, it needs to happen. Yes. All right, if you scroll some more, Kim. All right, so stop there. So on the original list that was put out for athletic planning, East Iberville was next up for the baseball softball complex thing. So you have to decide, you know, in the spring if that's going to stay on there. I'm going to tell you now, it's going to cost more than what that projection was. That projection is from 3 years ago, two to 3 years ago. We know what kind of costs we dealt with Plaquemine High's one. Now, this one is a little bit different because there's existing space where these baseball and softball fields are, which they will go back into that same area where Plaquemine High was starting from scratch, you know. But that particular one was the next one up that would have come up, but it's going to cost more than that. So the design team will be working on budgets for all of that.
So is that with artificial turf lights like that on it?
That's going to be up to what we all decide to do. You know, I think the,
Grass like north.
well, that's on the list too. I mean, all of them were designed to be done as a complex, one at a time. Plaquemine High went first, East was second, White Castle was third, and then North was the next one after. And when this plan was originally done,
But I think
North wasn't on the radar. Look,
I think where we have.
I'm not going to argue that. Y'all have a very fine baseball field because it was done basically from scratch. And the drainage is good, the grass is good, your upkeep's a little bit different on what you have
Compared
to
to
do.
what we had,
But-
so it's pretty good.
No, it is. So,
All we see men and women, White Castle,
Well, I don't know if we're getting anywhere yet, but I have, y'all gave me the authorization to negotiate. I did speak to the landowner. They had an appraisal done. That's what they're gonna wanna try to obtain. I have spoken with Mr. Lou Delahaye. He is looking at all of the legal aspects around it, you know, with having two different appraisals. We can purchase above the appraisal we've done. We do have a compelling reason to do so. There's nowhere else to build anything over on that campus. We're landlocked. And a huge component is to get that softball field back to the school. So he's working with the legal stuff, and then the other little entanglement, there's sugarcane being farmed on that land right now. You know, so if we ultimately purchase the land, then we've got to deal with the farmer that's farming on there right now. So yes, the talks are in progress.
Okay, that's support.
All right, another one that was on the list was the football press box at North. That can be scratched out because it's included in the football project that's out for bid right now. And then North, we had the visitor restroom concessions for the football side that was slated for 2025-26 as well. We got to revisit that budget number to see if that's still good or not. Scroll to the next page, please. Right. And then Plaquemine High, there was a lighting project involved originally, and at White Castle, the locker room renovations and upgrades for 25-26. Those were things that were on that big 5-year plan, all right? Now the next set of items, some of them I've talked about already, some of them I have not. These are some other, and I'm calling them needs, that we're going to have to consider in the spring. The first one, we've talked about the Crescent Early Childhood Building already. The next one deals with the turf at Plaquemine High. We're getting to where that turf is going to need to be replaced. We might be able to get another year out of it, not quite sure. But we need to have this on the radar because other pieces of that particular campus's projects included replacing the track, which is getting time for that as well, and waterproofing of the stadium, which is a structural issue that we have to address. So with this particular one, we will be far better off financially if all of that's done at the same time. If you try to piecemeal that, it's going to cost you more money, and it'll be kicking a little can down the road that really would all need to be addressed at the same time. So we need to have that on the radar.
I have a question. The front office at East Ippaville, it need to be renovated. Where can we put that? Where can that be placed? What, line?
We can, that probably go into maintenance budget.
Because it's,
we got to figure out what to do with it.
The front office, yeah. Because it's,
But with that one, yes, with the and we got all of that in the walkthrough data already. So it's in that walkthrough data, but the other part of that is we need to redo some of the single point of entry piece.
Yeah.
So all of that needs to be done at the same time.
Okay.
But yeah, it needs some sprucing up. No doubt.
Thank you.
No doubt. All right, scroll some more, Kim, please. All right. We talked about MSA West additional dining. We talked about band rooms at both MSA East, White Castle. And then I just made sure to keep these on the radar because the school food service warehouse project, we kind of pushed that aside, because it wasn't as big of a priority as the things that we're doing now. But also the plan would be to tear this out over here once we have a new one and build a new building for IAPS and RVLA. Where the vacant lot is? On Railroad Avenue.
Are we going to do some parking here?
So parking is going to be added over here, but that was for this complex.
Right.
Then a new school food service warehouse would have allowed for tearing down the old one in that area, which then opens up parking over there, plus give us the ability to put a building and get rid of these modular buildings that are back here, which could ultimately lead to more parking down the line. So the school food service warehouse was originally in this year's project. Last spring, we put that out because we felt like these other projects were a bigger priority. I'm still not going to recommend a school food service warehouse for next year because I think these other things are more important, which then kind of impacts what we can do as far as IAPS RDLA. We can design a building to fit on that property as is, leave the warehouse where it is, but it's going to present a serious parking problem and a traffic flow issue over there by not freeing all of that space up. So those, I don't want to get them off of the radar, but I'm probably not recommending that for next year. Now, if the board wants to do it, then you all can vote to do it. But I think we have other priorities because we're going to have a finite number from a project standpoint that we need to deal with. If y'all remember last spring, came in and said, we're good for 10, probably good for another 5. Gotta wait on the other 4. So we prioritize. That's the approach I'm going to come back with to you all in the spring again. I think we'll be able to start with a higher number first. But from a priority standpoint, there's some things up there I think are bigger. If I got to pick between a school food service warehouse and those other things at the top of that, then I'm going to recommend those other ones first.
What happened with school food service, maybe purchasing that building?
So the Family Dollar building, I mentioned to you all, went up for sale. They're asking $2.1 million, which is a little up there. The appraisal came back around $675. That's a huge difference, right? Now I'm going to tell you, if we could purchase that building for 1 to 1.5, then I think it's well worth it because we could then renovate it for way under a total of $3.5 million. I will also say that $3.5 million may not be any good anymore. That's from 3 years ago. So that number's probably not good anymore. So we're trying to let the realtor know that we ordered an appraisal. This is what it came out at. Can we try to negotiate somewhere here for something? Whether they're going to want to do that, I don't know. We think their intention is to try to lease that building for whatever commercial use that they can get out of.
We're kind of, I think, looking at it to lease it, the art.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're looking for a building.
We're in competition. Now, that would have been a perfect location for us, but we can't pay them what they're asking for with the appraisal that came. It's not like the land in White Castle, you know, where you got a much smaller variance. This is a huge variance from appraisal to what they're asking.
For the pre-K building at Crescent, I don't know if the plans have been, you know, I don't know how far you've come on the plans, but what is the thought? To tear down the old building and put the new building where the old building is, or on the side? There's a lot of, so you wouldn't disrupt school if you they could stay in the old building.
Yeah, so ideally, I would like to see the old building gone and utilize that piece of property. Because if we build it while keeping them there, you're going to be right next to a construction site with pre-K kids, for one thing.
Right.
The noise, the amount of traffic that's going to be in the vicinity of a group of kids that we've got so many, we have, like, our own maintenance people can't go into one of those classrooms without someone who's licensed at the school to walk in with them.
The 3-year-old.
Yes, I don't like that proximity of how close.
They have enough room? to put those children?
Yes, we've already identified 4 classrooms to put them in. Yes, and Lydia's been over there to kind of look at what we need to do for licensing. But ideally, I would want to put the 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds in the main building in these temporary locations, tear that building down, because we can then preserve where the playground is. Now, it needs a new cover, new matting, but the playground, if we did it the other way, we'd have to tear it out. Then there's another playground that the elementary kids use. We would have to tear that out and remove it if we didn't tear the building down first. Now, the footprint should be a little bit bigger than what the current footprint is, because what we'd like to see, Ms. Stein and I had a good talk about it a few weeks ago. We want to put 6 classrooms. We currently have 2 pre-K 3, 2 pre-K 4. We have had years at Crescent where we've had 3 of one. So make sure that we can accommodate if we get to 3 and 3. And have a space in there for faculty restrooms. Student restrooms would be in the classrooms. Have a space for a workstation for early childhood, and have a spot for the family education facilitator. Now, they have not designed anything yet, because I got to make sure that we're going to move with this. But they have a number that they can utilize, because the numbers for MSA West are fresh. You know, for the 3 classrooms, that part of that addition are very fresh with current market numbers for construction.
This would be a larger, wouldn't it?
It would be larger, but the square footage over at MSA West included the administrative work in that lobby area and all. So we're projecting about $3 million for that building at Crescent, just based off of the classroom space numbers at MSA West.
Dr. Warren.
Yes.
This list, looking at the 24-25 project list compared to this list, it seems like for 24-25 we have more on this list than we do this one.
You do.
However, without getting too far ahead, one project that I continue to look at, and it looks like we've been dealing with this maybe from the beginning of the school year, is the MSA West gym floor repair. Waiting on a quote.
So I do want to, I want to respond to the first thing you said. So
Waiting on a quote.
the sheet, Mr. McGlasher, with the 9, that was the big capital outlay stuff.
Okay.
We're fortunate, again, with our local revenue. We have a healthy maintenance budget. We have been able, for instance, to spend between $400,000 and $450,000 on each campus that we've been able to change out their intercom systems.
That's good.
Come next school year, we only got 3 left. Thanks to that young man sitting there behind the streaming camera and his work with that department. We've changed out and upgraded intercom systems now at almost every campus. I think next year is going to be 3 that we'll have left. That is huge. Yep, that is an emergency communication system that is so far advanced. And one of the things might have to get them to come do a demo or something one day. With this system, we have teachers in classrooms that have a mic. And there's speakers in the classrooms. And as they're teaching, the audibleness of the instruction is so much better. We've got some teachers that really struggle to speak loud enough. This is saving their voices. We've got some that speak loud that have learned to tone it down. But kids are able to hear so much better in those classrooms where this is being utilized.
So, I've got a question. At Darcyville School, I was at a program and that sound system in that gym looked like this has been there since I was there. You can't hear nothing.
I'm not aware of that one.
Yeah.
You know, but we can definitely take note and check on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can take
I just
note.
thought about it because I was over there
And
it's
to,
bad. It's really bad.
to go back to that, Evan can update you on the gym floor over there is a dilemma.
So, glad you asked about that. So I got quotes to repair, it's a quarter of the gym. So when I said quarter, it's probably a little bit less than that. If you look at the basketball goal, and you split down the basketball goal to the door, that right there, that repair is $85,000. Why is it $85,000 when the whole gym costs $141,000 to put in? The material that was spec'd in from the original job, from my knowledge and from all the paperwork, it was supposed to be 2 1/4 inches wide. They put in 2 1/2 inches wide. I talked to multiple contractors at that time. A lot of companies had 2 1/2 inches of wood that was going out, so they put it in whenever they could. I wasn't here, this happened in 2020 or 2021, to say that's what they did, I don't know. But from what you see on there, it's 2 1/2 inches wide. So now I have to get this custom made, and it costs $85,000 to custom make. To replace the whole floor, to go back to the original design of 2 1/4, it's gonna cost about $170,000. I got that last quote right before I went on my surgery. I brought it to Dr. V. Dr. V said, hey, we'll talk about it as a whole because that's something that ultimately y'all gonna have to make a decision on because it's a big difference. My perspective on it. If we spending $80,000 on this little section and it happens somewhere on another side, we're gonna spend another $60,000 to $80,000 to do it again. What I would do is just go ahead, allocate the money, get your new floor in, get it back to the 2 1/4 like it was supposed to be, and have a new floor, and then we're ready to rock and roll. Then if there's something ever happens again, it's a standard 2 1/4, and they can justify 2 1/4 is your standard size floor.
It is.
2 1/4 is your standard size floor. So that's why we're having so many issues. The first company came in, that's why I kept saying waiting on quotes. First company came in, had the wood on site, ready to put it in. They said, Evan, we got 2 1/4. This is 2 1/2. You got it's not gonna match up. We can't do the job. We're not even gonna touch it. So then we asked him, can y'all take a section out of underneath the stadium, underneath the bleachers or something, put it in? He said, we will not do it because if we start pulling up that old floor, it will never go back down, and you're gonna break more pieces than it would when you try to put it down. It's not gonna match. So ultimately, this is on y'all to make that decision, and then y'all just let me know what y'all wanna do.
Right,
Thank you.
and one of the other things that our original quote back then had 2 1/4.
I did.
They just installed 2 1/2, and we probably just didn't, well, we didn't catch it in time.
You won't catch it unless you take that, unless you go measure that piece.
Right,
I mean,
but it's a lesson learned,
yeah, it is.
so we could make sure we watch it, which I don't think they're using 2 1/2
They don't.
anymore anyway.
It was a design that they were gonna try to go to, and it didn't catch. So all these companies had these 2 1/2s just sitting. Well, guess what? I'm slipping in,
Right.
and nobody's gonna know for the next 5 years.
Right.
There is a check and balance to that. That was a flooring that was done directly by the district back then. Normally, when we do a project, they submit shop drawings to us, where we can look at it, approve it, then we look at it when we go out on the job site. I don't think that process happened because it was directly done by the
It was
district.
so low, it was 140,000, so it was 2 quotes and they can get it done, so it wasn't an architectural project. But if you do something like that, I think the architect need to be involved to have the checks and balances. Even though it's
Yes.
under the 140 or 170 or 250, we still need to have them so they can make sure, and then if it screws up, we go there.
Blame me.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I'll let you all know soon, where we're gonna go with that. I think we all know it's gotta just get done.
Right.
And we need to be fiscally responsible with it. But I need to walk through with our, design team as far as options for dining room expansion and all, to look at different options. But, I'm leaning at this point towards just tearing it out, putting a whole new one in and being done with it, because I really don't think we have much of an option there. If we ever have to if we do the patchwork and ever deal with it again, we're gonna have the same problem all over again, So
But the gym is being utilized.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
It's not stopped it from being
No.
used, but
Right.
it's time for that to get rectified. All right. I think that's the end of that particular one. So that kind of wraps up that piece of back to time to millages. But I do want to go to one more item that does relate back to a question of how has the district done academically since the tax was passed in 2008? That was a question that I did receive from a board member to address today. So let's go back one. Click on here, and we got these. Ms. Bartholomew finished these up last night, so we got a hard copy of it, and it's in the PowerPoint. So back in 2000, and to kind of scroll down some more. So in 2008, 2009, and in 2010, there was no letter grade system. You received 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, or 4 stars, and you could have been put in what was called back then corrective action. You could have been put in a school takeover status, where the state took over. This was before letter grades were issued. So there you see where Iberville stood, a 1 star, 1 star, 2010, 2 stars. So 2008 reflected the year before the 31 mil tax was passed. 2009 reflected the first academic year after, and that would have been that when a big raise was given to staff back then. Then in 2011, accountability changed. And letter grades were then issued, and there was a 200-point grading scale. So 86.2 looked good, right? But it was a D, because it was a 200-point grading scale. And they used baseline and growth data for SPS. The next year, it grew up a little bit. And then in 2013, formula changed again. And so the number dropped, but the district was a C. Grew in 2014, took a little decline in 2015. However, the elementary assessments changed. So there you see a pattern there. Every couple of years they change it. And then 16, 17, up and down a little bit. 18 dropped a pretty good bit. However, a new formula came in that year to change it again. Y'all, as we do better, they change it. You don't see that pattern?
Yep.
There's a political motivation behind this. Then in 2019, became a B. COVID, we had no district performance score. We did not test that year. And then the formula was adjusted again. And then 2021, that was an unofficial simulated score after the first year we reopened from COVID. 22, went up a little bit, right below a B. 75 would have been a B. 23, 75.7B, and the hot off the press, 75.3 is our current district letter grade of a B. So the trend in here is, as the district has improved performance, every few years accountability changes and it drops. And it does that to everybody. That's not unique to Iberville. I will tell you, and I mentioned it in the email I sent to you this week, our 0.4 of a drop is largely attributable to a drop of 8.2 index points on ACT. We had already begun addressing ACT to start the school year. Last school year, we put a lot of emphasis on core instruction to address LEAP exams because we needed those academic indices to grow on LEAP. And guess what? They grew. ACT kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. So you're going to see a difference in that, next year. But guess what's happening again soon?
Another fall.
New accountability system coming in. So,
What does that look like?
so that's the one that's going to be probably 90% based on LEAP scores. Strength of diploma is going to come out. Interest and opportunities is going to come out. Graduation rate is going to be very limited if it's in there at all. It's going to have a group of kids identified as your lowest 25% performing students. Those kids are going to have targets. If they meet their targets, then you get bonus points, so to speak, or progress points. ACT is going to have a heavy weight as well, but 90% of a high school score, for instance, is going to be 6 LEAP exams. English 1, English 2, Algebra 1, Geometry, Civics, Biology. And guess what? Kids only got to make approaching basic on 1 of the Englishes, 1 of the maths, and 1 of either Civics or Biology to graduate. So we're going to transition. I think next school year at this time when they issue the 24-25 accountability scores, they're going to give us what our score is based on the current system, and then they're going to tell us what it would have been on the new one. And then the following year, the new one kicks in.
So you did say approaching basic.
Yes. But they get 0 points in accountability. And in the new system, like right now, basic gives you 80 points. In the new system, you get 0. So the political motivation behind this is they're saying our high schools in Louisiana's school performance scores are too high.
What? Wow.
So got to bring them down.
Yeah.
And like I've always said, I'm a firm believer in accountability. I think testing is good. I think we test too much. But I think having those benchmarks are good. But having those graduation rates matter too. And having strength of diploma where kids can get into college or go to work or go to trade school, that matters. And the new system will take all of that part out. And pretty much everything based on the test scores.
Right. Who is creating these?
I think you're having a lot of this coming through people who are advocates of charter schools and advocates of this LA Gator program for school choice. And the places that your public dollars will go will not have the accountability that public schools do. So you will have no way to measure whether they're successful or not. All right, so go back to the slide. So I'm going to ask y'all now if y'all want to take a break. We've been sitting here for a little over 2 hours. Before we move to the next items. And so y'all want, how long you want to do, Ms. Laws?
Y'all want about 10, 15 minutes? 10 minutes?
10 minutes good.
10 minutes good.
All right, 10 minutes, so 11:15, Mr. Simon, we will reconvene and go back live.
back in session. Dr. Reed? Which item?
The next
Oh,
item.
we're on the next item already? So that's item number 4.
Next one.
Okay, so item number 5, discuss current status of Montessori at Iberville Elementary School and future plans.
Okay, next slide. This topic around Montessori and Iberville Elementary has come up multiple times over the last few years, and pretty much each time I have a community meeting that I attend in Parkland, it comes up. But what some folks don't know is over the last few years, the Montessori program has been really getting weaned out. When Montessori first went into Iberville Elementary, you had multi-grade classrooms where pre-K3, pre-K4, and kindergarten were all mixed together, and first and second grade were mixed together. After a few years, they began separating out the first and second graders into separate classrooms and began implementing the Tier 1 core curriculum in ELA first and then eventually in math, because the teachers in the upper grades were noticing that kids were not coming in ready to receive the Tier 1 curriculum for the first time in the third grade, and of course they started taking LEAP that year. So over time, first and second grade has been completely taken out of the equation when it came to Montessori. Kindergarten has been separated out from the pre-K students as well. Kindergarten has very little semblance of Montessori left in it. It may be some, what would be learning centers when a teacher may be working with small group. Those may be Montessori based, but the whole Montessori, curriculum and structure has come out. This year, we still have pre-K 3 and 4 combined, but we've implemented the Tier 1 Frog Street curriculum that's used in pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 in both ELA and math. Last year, it was implemented in ELA in pre-K. And so our plan is to phase it out completely. I went back and looked at the Academy registration data since I've been here in 2020. And there is hardly any interest in Montessori being a choice program by parents. The range was from 0 in a year that requested Montessori as a choice to 4. Most years it was 1 or 2. So that demand is just not there for parents to make that choice. If you scroll to the next slide, what academically I'm looking at doing for next year is phasing it out completely. And the part that I do know I need to come to the board with is about the name of the school for one thing, and just about introducing to you the whole concept of what we want to do in that transition. Because the name of the school became Iberville Elementary, a Montessori school or program. And beginning next year, following this academic program and phase out, then that part would need to come off. I, however, did not want to take something out and just say, no, we're just going back tradition. I think that we have a wonderful opportunity at Iberville Elementary to work towards a pre-STEM pathway for kids that end up in high school. So we met with Ms. Medine, and I've met with her a few times over the last couple of years about, you know, how are we going to move forward with this from the Montessori perspective. And then we met with her with, we don't want to pull something out and not replace it with something that could hopefully be exciting, innovative, and help to draw kids back in. So the STEM side of this has expanded in schools, you know, throughout the country, and with the local business and industry that we have, you know, our plants really support a lot of the STEM activities that happen in schools. So I made a contact with someone at the State Department of Education and asked them, can you please find out what LDOE may have out there, what kind of grant opportunities, what kind of program opportunities, even if we don't get a grant, can we explore to implement in one of our elementary schools. So they sent us some contacts, and Ms. Johnson then, in her role as Executive Director of Academics, has been working with LDOE on a couple of ideas and you know, things that we can implement on a pilot basis that she'll talk about in a minute. But we did get a grant award. She'll talk to you about that, and it's for training for teachers first. We do have the potential to try to get some business and industry partnerships involved with this. With this grant, there will be some university partnerships. And then I would like to have the 25-26 school year as this pilot year. And then if we see where we're ready in the 26-27 year, open it up as a choice program in the district. I don't want to try to sell something that we don't know yet how it's going to work. And so that's why I like the pilot year. Now I'll tell you, if a parent comes along of a second grade and says, look, I see the STEM work that y'all do and my kid is really interested, then I'll probably give them special permission to go. But I don't want to market it as a choice program until we've had a year of implementation. That way we know what we can market to parents as far as a choice. So if you go to the next slide, Ms. Johnson, if you can pick up from there on the work that y'all have been doing.
All right, so after reaching out to the Department of Education, they did send several resources and contacts for us to start speaking to. And one of them was the LSU Kane Center and a grant that we applied for, which was a $40,000 grant. And I wrote the grant, and we're happy to say that we were awarded $30,000. It is just an initial grant that they have told me will continue from year after year because it's something that they believe in and they want to continue to fund. It may be more than $40,000 next year. We are not sure yet, but for this year it was a $40,000 grant and we were awarded $30,000, which is great for us because it's able to build our program and get us up and running as far as curriculum, materials, and training for our teachers. It's not going to pay for a teacher, but it's going to it's going to give us to be able to pay for the cost of all of those things that otherwise we would have had to pick up for. So when I wrote the grant, of course, I worked in collaboration with LSU and the Kane Center to lay out a vision for STEM for IES. And this would create a pathway into the high school. So what we want to do is build these students up in their STEM capacity starting in kindergarten, and some of the programs actually go down to pre-K, but the grant did not allow us to put pre-K in, so I did have to start the grant at kindergarten, where they would have an introduction to basic computer concepts, coding, games, and activities used for visual programming languages, and simple robotics projects using programmable toys. And I just put a picture of the toys. They call them toys, but they're actually robots, where the students would actually start building these starting in kindergarten all the way through 6th grade. And then our students would be eligible to participate in national competitions for robotics and for programming. And then the curriculum just continues from grades 1 to 3 and 4 to 6 and just becomes more advanced at every grade level. This would eventually lead to robotics pathways, cybersecurity pathways into the high school, which we would have to put at the high school as well. So the next time we would write the grant, we would have to also include the higher grade levels to make sure we have the resources for our high schools. I can't speak for LDOE or the grant, but it was very promising when they spoke to me that they will probably fund this more than $40,000 on a continuous basis, because this is something they are really invested in. So the curriculum would be Ignite initiative, and that would be training through LSU and the Kane Center. And then all of these materials are the materials that go with the curriculum. So we would buy the materials that are aligned with the curriculum as well. If you go to the next slide, the partnerships would be the Capital Area STEM Center, LSU Kane Center, and we also put in a letter of support at Texas A&M, where this would be high quality leadership training for anybody that we hire to teach these STEM classes. And they would actually get an opportunity to receive a stipend of up to $10,000 a year for completing these leadership programs. And then it would be a model for other states. It's actually a Department of Education grant, not an LDOE grant that Texas A&M is applying for. LSU is also a part of that grant. And it would be great training for our teachers. Not that many Louisiana districts submitted a letter of support, so I'm hoping that they would allow us to send more than 1 or 2 people to the trainings if we did receive that grant from DOE. But of course, that grant wouldn't be an Iberville Parish grant, it would be a Texas A&M LSU grant, but they are willing to partner with us, and they are very excited that we are trying to bring STEM to an elementary school. Not that many elementary schools are actually looking to put in a comprehensive program that would lead to a high school pathway. So very excited and very optimistic that this is something that we will be able to continue for years with grants.
So can I ask, how does a day look in a classroom with this?
So this would not be during the core instruction. This would actually be during specials, where we would make sure that every child was scheduled for that course. So like, for example, when a teacher has a planning period, all the first grade classes might go to library, all the first grade classes might go to PE. This would be another part of that rotation, where they would at least see the students at least once or twice a week for that period of time. So it's more like an elective.
So there's a grade involved?
No, there would be no grade involved. It would just be like the other elective periods. I mean, that is something we can look at, where it would be a course where if we did, have a curriculum and we could go to the Department of Ed to see if it could be a course put in elementary school. Of course, when it gets to high school, it would be a grade involved.
Okay, thank you.
The only possible grade level that might get a grade would be 6th grade, because that might be something we can put in as a Carnegie unit. I'd have to look at the course catalog to see.
Don't we have something like this at MSA West?
Yes, they do have a STEM class at MSA West.
And how often do the students go to that?
Yeah, they're on a rotation.
They're on a
as well.
rotation as well, but the high school kids do have the pathway and they go to it every day.
Yeah, but it's in the elementary now.
Yes, but it's a
right?
rotation. It's basically just like this would be modeled off of. It's in a rotation.
Okay.
But as I mentioned earlier, we want to try to get something in place to kind of catch up with the technological piece that's out there now, pilot it, before really going out and doing a big marketing thing on it, and have it more consistent, where if you're in kindergarten, this is what you do. If you're in first, this is what you do. If you're in second, this is what you do, all the way up to try to lead into one of the STEM pathways that kids can get in high school. Again, we're in the very pre and planning stages. Mm-hmm. And next year will be a pilot.
Good, I like that.
That's good.
All right, if you have no questions, we'll go to the next agenda item.
Okay. Item number 6 on the agenda is discuss early childhood support in schools.
All right, this again was an item that I was asked by a board member to bring up for discussion here. I think most of you know, if not all of you, the social, emotional, behavioral issues that we are encountering with young children. They're on the rise. And I know some of you get calls from teachers about, certain things that are happening with kids. On this next slide, I just, kind of wanted to point out to you some of the things that we already have in place in how we try to respond to these things. So in the special ed department, first, we've got power positions that we call special circumstance powers that the board approved in staffing a few years ago. Again, you relay this back to, why do you have so many employees? Well, it's because of stuff like this. I don't know any other district that does this. I think there's 6 of these. And they get placed based upon where we have the most needy kids in those really younger grades. Typically by the time they're reaching 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, some of those behaviors kind of tone down. But when we've got kids coming in at 3 and 4 and 5 years old, some of whom have never been in school, some of whom are coming from environments that have not prepared them to be in school, and then some are coming from some environments that have created some behavioral issues that we then take in every day. That's where these special circumstance powers are placed. So they move. If a kid adds to a school, then Ms. Moore is going to look at where she's got people allocated and make adjustments if necessary. In early childhood, every 3-year-old classroom has a power. Every 4-year-old classroom has a power. Just from early childhood. Many of our early childhood classes have a teacher and 2 powers. We have early intervention teachers, which are special education teachers for kids who are 3, 4, 5-year-olds. So you can walk into a classroom in pre-K at times and find 2 teachers and 2 powers with 17 to 20 kids. Those SPED services are provided for kids who are identified as being SPED, which that number is growing every year in those early childhood programs. And in early childhood, we also have itinerant powers. That was added by the board into our budget when we had ESSER money with COVID. We've maintained that in our budgets because if a power calls in sick, we need another power in that room. So the itinerant early childhood powers pretty much are covering when somebody's out, but if they don't have an absence to go cover, then they get assigned to a place to be that's based on needs of kids. We also look and assess staff on an as-need basis. I'll use this as an example right now. MSA West has probably 18 to 20 kindergarten kids per class, which is higher than most, probably higher than all of the schools, because all the rest of them have smaller numbers. This year, Ms. Blanchard and I spoke, because I got some feedback with some of my visits that I made. This group is a little more this year, a little more needy, needs a little more help. We had a power that rotated amongst the 4 kindergarten classes. So after assessing what was going on. When we did the original staffing budget, I asked for 3 reserve power positions for the fiscal year, and I asked for 3 reserve teachers. And those are where we go to without having to come back to the board to add positions when we need to address these situations. We had already used the pre-K, or added a section of pre-K, which was a power and a teacher from that reserve amount, because we ended up picking up more kids at Dorseyville than we thought at the beginning we were going to get. We thought we were cutting the class there. So I had 2 reserves still left with power. We added 1 at MSA West for kindergarten. So now they have 2 powers that go in and support in those kindergarten classes. Ms. Moore just emailed me yesterday about requesting and looking at the potential addition of another early childhood or early intervention teacher for pre-K and kindergarten. So as those numbers and those circumstances change, we address them, we assess them. Before I add more positions, I always look to see what are the people doing that we have now. So when I received an email from Ms. LeBeau about another early intervention teacher potentially, I emailed back. I want to see the caseload for every one of the early intervention teachers we have in the district and where they're at. Because sometimes you got to reallocate current resources, and then sometimes you got to add. And when we have a need to add, we do. And when we have a need to reallocate, we do. I'm not going to come ask the board to increase positions in the budget unless it's an absolute necessity. We build in some reserve spots to start off with. Use this as an example. This has nothing to do with early childhood, but the demand for art with the increased enrollment at MSA West skyrocketed this year. And we were having a teacher balancing between general ed students with art and gifted students with art, with a higher demand for kids wanting to take it. We had vacancy with the enrollment drop at Platinum High that couldn't get filled. So I didn't add a new position in, I repurposed a position. We don't need this one, we need it over here. So that's how we operate with staffing around these early childhood supports. I can just about guarantee you, when we need to work on staffing for next year, we will need to add more resources for these 3, 4, and 5-year-olds.
That could be changing campus, a lot of them.
Well, that's the 3-year-olds coming in,
Yeah,
and
they're changing campus, that's a lot of them.
they have the personnel there for that piece, but the behavioral pieces are ones that are becoming a bigger issue.
Right.
Remember now, some of our kids that come to us in the 3-year-old classes are still 2 years old, because September 30th is the cutoff date. So a bunch of them are 28 to 30 months old even at this time of year. So if they have some developmental delay, they may not be fully potty trained yet.
And they may not be on track to get other help that they need because they're just coming into it.
That's right.
How are the special circumstances paras trained? How are they trained? Because if they are a special circumstance para, there must be additional training than a regular para.
No, they receive the same training as para. Special circumstance means how they're placed.
Right.
But all SPAD paras get trained with the same thing through pupil appraisal.
Right, they all have their PD days and train, but they're dealing with special needs children.
All of them are. The special circumstance just simply means I place you somewhere where we need additional people. But they're all working with the same kids.
But some of them are labeled special ed para, right?
All of them are.
So
They're all SPAD paras.
So now they're all on the same pay level?
Correct. They're all sped powers. The special circumstance are just this extra pool of personnel that today, I might go to Iberville Elementary.
Yeah,
2 weeks from now, I gotta go to Crescent.
that's a special,
No, that's the
Right.
itinerant, right? That's the itinerant.
You got two different groups of people. The special circumstance
Right.
powers are the sped powers that are itinerant. Early childhood has its own itinerant
Itinerant.
powers that were originally put into the budget to have basically the permanent sub, so to speak. Because if you got a power out, you got to keep ratio in those classrooms. So when the power's out, that early childhood power goes in to take her place.
So the itinerant powers are trained by the early childhood staff, from my
Yes.
understanding?
Yes.
Okay, so the special circumstances powers have to be trained by the sped department?
Correct. And then Ms. Moore and Ms. Canova figure out which trainings need to overlap. And they'll do them together. So we've got sped powers that are either special circumstance or they're assigned to a school permanently. If they're primarily working in early childhood, then they'll get trained all together. But it's two different groups of powers. So you've got your regular full-time, home-based early childhood powers. Then you have your early childhood itinerant powers, which there's 4 or 5 of them. They go fill in if somebody's out. Then you have your school-based special education powers. And then you got your special education powers who are basically itinerant. But they're not assigned based upon this power is out, I need you to go there today. They're assigned based on this school has these 2 kids that need a lot more support, so this is where you go. One of the kids was at East, now at Iberville Elementary. Well, the personnel shifts in that circumstance. You know,
so is it possible that, like these 3-year-old parents, I'm just thinking out loud here, they're getting contact or these kids are coming in without IEPs or whatever they need, and they may be special needs children, but they're not identified yet. Should we train our parents to have some type of experience with special needs children?
they all receive training to work with kids who may or may not have a disability.
Okay.
But all kids that come in at that young, they all need a different kind of training.
Everybody needs some extra training, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Several,
But there's a lot of crossover with what Ms. Moore and Ms. Canova plan for PD for their powers.
several 3-year-olds come in with an IEP.
Yeah,
Yes.
Several do.
we do, but we don't have, not all of them.
No, not all of them, but several do. Several do.
A lot do.
A lot do.
I think we're up to 36 or so kids
Yeah,
right now
right.
in
Almost
early
40.
childhood that have IEPs.
Right.
And it's going to grow. But whether a kid has an IEP at that age or not, there's different issues dealing with.
Right.
And some of them are not disability issues. You know, some of them are environmental, some of them are emotional. They could potentially lead to a disability issue down the road. So, you know, I was asked to kind of discuss this, but do know that as we know about the needs, we will make adjustments and shift, you know, around those needs.
What are our learning labs? What is that? I've heard that mentioned a few times.
That would be your special ed resource minutes, more than likely. They're calling it that learning lab. So we've got kids that have IEPs that are in a general regular ed classroom. They have special education minutes. When they have special education minutes in the IEP, they get pulled out of the regular classroom to receive that accommodation. And it may be called a learning lab, but it could just be small group instruction.
And who instructs them?
The special ed teacher or para. Now, you may also be referring to what we're working on right now with English language learner kids. So remember, us, Point Capete, West Baton Rouge, and UView Academy went into this consortium together. Ms. Martin is working with all 4 districts around improving the quality of instruction for EL kids. And they're calling some of what they're doing for pull-out with that EL group of kids a lab. So that could be what you're referring to as well.
Also, Dr. V, we have something at Crescent that's fall under the special ed umbrella, that most of the students that go to this, whatever at Crescent are really from Ipswich Elementary. I was kind of talking with Ms. Moore, and they're gonna be possibly moving that to
Possibly
Ipswich?
not, yep.
So what that?
So that's Leap Connect.
Leap Connect,
All right,
okay.
so we've got a group of kids who are special education students who, because of the severity of their disability, qualify for what's called alternate assessment. And Leap Connect is the assessment. They don't take regular LEAP tests. Their graduation requirements become driven by their IEP. They have disabilities to the degree that they're not going to receive a high school diploma that's traditional. All right, they're going to get a Leap Connect, basically, program. These are your alternate assessment students.
Okay.
So that class was at Iberville Elementary. And that class kind of moves based upon where the bulk of the kids are. So when I first came to the district, the class was at Iberville Elementary, and they had a class at Crescent. The numbers at Crescent went down, because here you're talking about a class that may have 5 kids in it, a teacher, and 3 or 4 powers. I mean, you're pretty close to one-on-one. I think at Plaquemine High School, we have 2 Leap Connect classes. At White Castle, we have a Leap Connect class that has like 3 or 4 adults and 5 or 6 kids. But we're talking about kids who may be severely cognitively delayed. They may have had some type of traumatic brain injury. They have a lot of physical needs where they're not mobile. They may need tube feeding. They may need diapering. They may need medicine administration. They may need all sorts of things.
So what they learning?
They're learning the Leap Connect curriculum, which is what the state says that we have to provide. And some of it's functional, right? The variance of the curriculum is completely dependent upon the kid and what's in their IEP. So, yes, very individualized. A group of our students, once they finish with their high school stuff, we got 4 or 5 of them that work at Dow right now in Project Search. Those are higher functioning, and we have a teacher that is assigned with them. But this Leap Connect class that Ms. Laws is talking about for some younger kids, what happened over the next couple of years, I think Iberville Elementary only had 1 kid left for that class, but Crescent had 4 or 5. So instead of busing all of them to Iberville, we moved the class. Now those numbers are beginning to shift the other way.
Okay.
And if that happens, then we'll move the class back.
Got it.
All right, any other questions around this particular topic? All right. Next item, Ms. Laws.
Okay. So the next, item number 7, is to discuss Plaquemine High School grade remuneration. Dr. B?
Okay, this was another item that I was asked to put on the agenda for discussion purposes. I will tell you administratively, I'm not ready to make any recommendation on this today. The request was to discuss the possibility of removing 7th and 8th grade from Plaquemine High. So I met with a group of our teams on the academic side in particular first, and just started talking. What are some things that we need to consider with this? So I listed a few of these on the PowerPoint, but I also have a document in here if you want to open it. This one, I'm not sure if we have in your packet because this is kind of it's been a living document. You can blow that one up. So the first thing we need to look at are numbers. How many kids are we talking about? Currently at Plaquemine High, there's 82 7th graders and 81 8th graders. That's a total of 163 kids. Coming down the pipeline, there are Iberville Elementary's got 54, 54, 5th and 6th grade. Crescent has 24 and 28. So if you look at those numbers, next year you would have 82, 6 going to 7th. And in 5th grade, looking a little bit further out, is 78. So the total average is around 80 kids, per grade level. Now, Iberville Elementary's enrollment currently is 450, Crescent 282, PHS with 7th through 12th grade on that day. Now that number's different today. I'm telling you, I think it's 540 right now. It's fluctuating every day, but 535 on that date, and PHS 9th through 12th was 372. Question first becomes, if you pull 7th and 8th grade out, where do you put them?
Exactly.
Okay? So, talk options here. And again, you can't decide anything, this is discussion only. But I just want to talk about considerations if we ever decide that we want to make some shift in configuration here. So, I would not ever propose to build a brand new facility that we know would only have 160 kids.
Same school.
I know we have some schools that are smaller in enrollment, but those schools exist today, and they've existed for a long time. To build a brand new school, you could be looking at $50 to $60 million. And if you build a middle school, it costs more. Because then you got to start working through gymnasiums. And you got to start working through other potential offerings. So then then where do you put them? Well, you can keep 7th and 8th grade at Crescent. Keep 7th and 8th grade at Iberville Elementary. Well, what does that then look like, space-wise? Both campuses have space. Now, at Crescent, that would mean adding 4 more teachers, which means 4 more classrooms at a minimum. Because that is just core, 7th and 8th grade, with those numbers. Well, that probably would take the classrooms that I need to put pre-K in to build a new building over there the right way. So that presents an issue. So, Iberville Elementary, you would need to allocate at least 6 more classrooms with those numbers. Just core. All right, that's just core. Now, where do you get the teachers from? Well, you got all these 7th and 8th grade teachers at Plaquemine High. They'd have to get reshuffled back to elementary schools. Wait, we're gonna
Leave them where they are and just put them on a different time, on a different side of the school.
They are. I'll talk about that. They are separated. So I'm just responding to what I was asked to present by a board member.
So I'm wondering, well, what would be the advantage of doing that?
Right, that's what I wanted to, that was one
I
of my
don't know.
questions.
It doesn't sound like there is one.
What's the purpose for considering? What's the advantages of considering?
Look, I was asked
Yeah,
to bring this up for discussion.
okay, so,
This was not something that I initiated, But when we're asked, that means somebody's asking.
What does the research show? Because
I don't know.
Right.
Not the person that asked, but in my mind, thinking of how Crescent was, 7th and 8th grade, they had, like their middle school sports, they had more parental involvement at Crescent. I don't know anything about Riverview Elementary, or it used to be E.J. Gate when it was middle school, where MSA is now. But I'm thinking that maybe some of those parents in that area, Crescent area.
I haven't heard from a parent directly from the Crescent area. I had one grandparent a year and a half ago ask me about this, who was from Plaquemine. I think there's advantages both ways. I think there's disadvantages both ways. For instance, when it comes to age span, I'm not all that crazy about 5-year-olds on a campus with 14 or 15-year-olds. But I'm also not crazy about 12-year-olds or 19-year-olds. So you got to flip both ways. And then you get kids on a school bus. I'd prefer to have older elementary kids with high school than have babies with on a bus. But what I want to look at, and what I told the academic team when we just started throwing all of this together, whatever we're asked to look at and make a recommendation on it, I want it to be in what's in the best interest for kids in general. And when it comes to elective offerings, we can offer far more on the high school campus. We've got some elective teachers that go back and forth at Plaquemine High. They do some middle school, they do some high school. When it comes to Carnegie credits, we have the ability to offer more on a high school campus than we do on an elementary campus. And then you've got all of this other stuff that we put on this list that could potentially lead to increased staffing needs, because if you then add these, probably both elementary schools are going to need another counselor. You're probably going to need, with the grade span that's out there, another master teacher potentially on each campus. You probably are going to need to look at, Crescent in particular, another administrative type position. Iberville Elementary already has 2 assistant principals and a discipline dean. We probably have to add one over at Crescent. So although the teaching part for core probably wouldn't be additional personnel, all of those other services probably would require additional personnel. And then you got to have more space for your electives.
So have y'all looked at any numbers? I'm just wondering I'm just trying to figure out what's really the issue, but the number of, say, 5th grade, 6th grade at Crescent and 6th grade at Iberville Elementary, when the following year, are those numbers staying the same?
Yeah,
so we're not losing kids
I don't think.
Okay.
No, they pretty much roll over.
That would have been my other thought, is that causing a problem with enrollment? But
The middle school.
What was the problem when they changed them? Because they were at elementary school. Middle school and elementary schools.
Yeah, once upon a time, you had a whole separate middle school.
Right.
And that's
You had elementary, you had middle, then you had high, and then 7th and 8th grade stayed at Crescent.
E.J. gave us.
What was the original purpose of them moving?
Yeah, what was the reason?
That happened a long time ago. The only thing that I know is when the academy was open, that took E.J. Gay School and made it MSA West.
But on my end, we just had Darcyville and White Castle, so those kids were at the elementary school. They were going to Darcyville School, the middle school.
Through 8th grade?
7 and 8
Yeah.
was
And
at
at
Northville.
Northville, it's always been
So they-
7 through
they-
12.
Yeah, and then they moved
Right,
them
yes, it's always
to
been.
the high school. I never understood why.
So I think
But they weren't
space, yeah, classroom space is an issue. I'm just going to tell you, I'm not ready to make any recommendation. I have not seen any research that deals with academic achievement based on grade configuration.
That's what I was wondering.
I haven't seen anything like that. All the research I've ever seen on what produces greater outcomes for student achievement is the classroom teacher. You know, it doesn't matter what the grade configuration is, it doesn't matter what the calendar is, it don't matter if it's year round, what matters is the quality of instruction in the classroom. So I don't think there's anything out there about grade configuration, at least I haven't seen it. We met with our strategic group yesterday, our planning partner on the strategic plan, and you know, we read the executive summary of a case study about successful schools and what they have in common. And the top 3 things were belongingness, coherence, and teaching curriculum back to instruction, and consistency. None of that has anything to do with a grade configuration or a year-round calendar or a traditional calendar or any of that stuff. You know, so these are things I wanted to bring to your attention because I was asked to do so. I will tell you at Plaquemine High today, the middle school is separated from the high school.
Yeah.
7th and 8th grade has their own middle school side of the campus. They have their own bell schedule, basically. They have their own lunch period that's separate.
Recess.
And the only time they really are mixing
On the bus.
is morning bus, afternoon bus, and they're going to cross paths when they do school-wide activities like a pep rally. And then middle school, you know, athletics is a whole nother ballgame here. Plaquemine High has a robust middle school athletic program. Now, whether that would exist if they stay at an elementary campus to that degree, I don't know.
Right.
But then there's a layer of expense that will come with that as well, because then you have to bus into Plaquemine every day for that type of stuff, and probably hire more coaches. I mean,
I
so
think we'd have to have some basis, something to even really dive into this.
Right. You know, so we appreciate Dr. V, you know, bringing the information to us, which is what, you know, he should do as a superintendent when asked. But we as a board have to decide, you know, he's already spent a lot of time just giving us the information that we have now, but the board has to decide, you know, do you want him to continue? Or do we say as a board, you know, right now we think the configuration is fine and we don't continue the effort for this?
and so that's not a decision thing today.
Right.
Please provide
We're not
me your feedback on
right.
that via email, text, whatever, and your
Right.
thoughts. I will say this. We've separated out that middle school, and I think that if 7th and 8th grade remains at Plaquemine High, we just have to ensure that whatever concerns that a parent may have, that we're addressing those in ensuring that, hey, this is the best opportunity for your kid with what we can offer in that middle school type age, because pretty much it operates as a school within a school right now.
Right.
So at the academy at West, we have 6th, 7th, and 8th with the high school.
Yes.
Right. And at East is just,
East, so at MSA West, because structurally it's similar, they can isolate the middle school to certain areas. So they, even though they're on the high school side, they're kind of like it is at Plaquemine High. They're on a different kind of schedule. They'll have some crossover with some elective things over there. At Plaquemine, they don't mix grade levels. At the K-12 schools, you got an elementary side, You got a middle in the middle at East, and then you got a high school side, but they're all in the same building. And at MSA East, you got the elementary side and the high school side, where those are a little closer, but they're smaller in numbers. So if you just want to provide me any feedback that you may have, then that'll let us know as a staff, where to go ahead. We did let Mr. Lewis and Ms. Stein and Ms. Medine know that this was going to be discussed. I don't think the elementary schools are too hip on this idea. And then the high schools, if you were to do that, you'd have a whole lot of empty space on that campus. All right, next item.
Okay, thank you, Dr. V, for that. The next item, number 8, is to discuss policy BBC, school board committees. Dr. V?
All right, this was another one that was in, it suggested that we discuss at the board retreat. I emailed these to you all a couple of weeks, several weeks ago when I got it from a board member. So all of that, was suggested to be talked about. With this one, board policy currently includes for committees for finance, building and grounds, insurance, and executive. And as you know, our policy, I linked it in here, so you have the policy, I think a paper copy of it, and you can pull it up in that PowerPoint. But our board policy calls out for these committees, and the board policy also says the order, insurance meets, then finance meets, then building and ground meets. That's the order of them. And it also states that there's an executive committee that in a 4-year term, every board member should be on it at least once, and for the committees themselves to rotate as best you can so everybody serves on all the different ones. What I had sent to me to consider to talk about today, which again, no decisions can be made today, it's just discussion. One was to eliminate committees altogether. That would require, of course, board action. The comment that was in the email was that the committees recommend, the board then considers, and if somebody that's not on the committee would want to, who didn't have a chance to vote against it in the committee, would want to pull it, then it creates another layer of a meeting.
It's never been a problem before pulling it to the full.
And I don't think it's a problem either.
Right.
One of two things can happen. In the committee, every board member has the opportunity to discuss and give their thoughts. I've witnessed our board and in committee take something and defer it to the full board meeting. I've also seen it pass at committee and a board member in the board meeting ask, can we pull that one piece? And we've done that.
Yes.
So that could be done. So the alternate suggestion was, if we keep committees, then the suggestion was to add a committee. And adding a committee would be an academics committee. Either one of those would require board action because you'd have to change policy. And it would require an agenda item to send this policy to the executive committee, and then the executive committee would make changes there. So this kind of becomes, you let me know, your thoughts, we can discuss now.
Academic committee? What would it?
So there are some school districts that have academic committees. Basically, it's a reporting committee.
Kind of like
On how students are performing?
Yes. So they may do what we do in the full board meeting in a committee meeting, where we present new curriculum things that we may want to do, like we've presented to you before when we implemented, I mentioned the firefighter thing a while back.
But we can't vote on curriculum.
That's correct.
I don't have any
So this would be basically a report only of anything that's academic related, which we have a curriculum and instruction component on the full board agenda. And when it's time to present data, we do. When there's new initiatives that we're looking at, I've done those in my superintendent's update, and I've also put them on the curriculum section. That way it's a little bit easier to find after the fact. But again, if there were an academics committee, then you would have to carve out when will that committee meet, and then what do you want presented at that committee, because the board really doesn't have authority over those kind of academic decisions. You have authority over policy that may involve some academic stuff, but not on the day-to-day operations of the district when it comes to that area.
Right.
We got plenty enough other business.
You know, I think, again, just like Dr. V presented, it comes before him, thank you. And, you know, you could give your feedback to him and decide whether or not, you know, we as a board want to pursue, you know, something like that.
You all just email me, let me know what your thoughts are, and then, you know, I'll take course of action, you know, based upon there. I try to give you all as much information as I can in a very timely fashion. And if there's anything in particular that you want us to do a presentation on at full board, y'all know we're going to do it.
Right.
But in your updates, you always do the academic
Yes.
information, right?
And then just to make it a little easier to find, if you want to go back and refer to some information, we could probably make sure that everything is in the curriculum part
Yes.
of the
Yes.
board meeting agenda.
Yes, and we've done that more, you know, I think, you know, last year there was some question about when accountability results were presented. There was some things I had in my superintendent update. We have started putting more in that curriculum section.
Right.
Like the truancy stuff that we work with, we've been putting it in there. Accountability next month. It's going to be in our curriculum section.
Right.
So unless you have any other discussion today, that was my last item. And so
I will thank you, Dr. V, again, an awesome job, just so much good information that you've given us today in such a transparent way, and you know, it's just very detailed. We appreciate it. We have one last item on the agenda, and that's number 9, and that's to discuss any board items. If anyone has any board items that has not already been discussed.
Where are we with Hope, Scott? Hope Squad?
transitioning, trying to get training in.
Okay. Any other thing? Okay. Do we have a motion? To adjourn?
3 or 4.
I have Lil Mike and Miss Catherine Williams second. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you all very much. Ian, is it done?
Let us know, it's off.